Come, Ray. The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball.
Little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win. Now the 2-1. Line drive into the corner. Justice has scored the tying run. Green to the plate. And he is safe. Safe at the plate. The Braves go to the World Series.
Have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baseline that sat when they were children and cheered their heroes.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable!
A 3-run home run for Bucky Dent. The Yankees now lead it by a score of 3-2.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mazeroski has hit a 1-0 pitch over the left field fence at Ford Field to win the 1960 World Series.
They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past.
The Pope arrived at Yankee Stadium. As one enthusiastic announcer put it, he is standing on second base.
Reggie Jackson. Long drive right field. It is goodbye. Big World Series for Reggie.
The Blue Jays are World Series champions as Joe Carter hits a 3-run home run.
Racker throws. There's a left back. It's going to be, I believe, the Giants from the pennant. The Giants from the pennant. The Giants from the pennant.
The 0-1 pitch. A liner off Nagy's glove into center field. The Florida Marlins have won the World Series.
The memories will be so thick that I can brush them between their faces.
The 1-0 delivery to Fisk. He swings, long drive, left field. If it stays fair, it's gone. Home run. The Red Sox win. And the series is...
Lolich fires. Ball is hit high in the air. This should be the series. Freehand waving everybody away in foul territory. Detroit wins. Here's the pitch to Willie. Here's a liner straight to Richardson. The ball game is over and the World Series is over. Willie McCovey hit it like a bullet. A line drive right.
Baseball to mark the time.
The Oakland A's take. I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Candlestick Park for Game 3 of the 1989 World Series.
It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again.
Frank Robinson, the right-hand batter.
Long drive to left field. Way back. This is it back.
Base hit loaded, 1 out. Pena in a chance. The Twins are going to win the World Series. The Twins have won it.
Ozzie with 1 out. Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy. It's a home run. And the
Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again.
Broadcasted live.
Hey! Who wants to have some fun?
There are balls coming from all over the place. Left field, center field, right field. See, this is the kind of thing, quite honestly, right now, that makes you want to see the Chicago Cubs team lose.
Now, you just saying you want to have fun, or do you really want to have fun?
It'll be fun.
Will the next person that sees anybody throw anything onto this field, point them out, or get them out of here. You don't live in Cleveland. Get them in Cincinnati.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
That is the farthest thing in the
universe from the truth.
Hello, everyone, live. It's the Dan Scott Show. And right there is your host, Dan Scott.
All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the program on a Chamber of Commerce type morning here in the upstate of South Carolina. I am your host, Dan Scott. We'll be with you for the next hour or so, and during the course of that time, you know our goal here is to try and, if your day's going well, we don't want to do anything to mess it up. If it's not, maybe we can provide you a little bit of a lift. And by the end of the show, our goal, more than anything, is to try to learn something we did not know. And again, that usually starts with the host. How are you this morning? Man, it is just a gorgeous day out there. I talked yesterday about how I am just tired of cold weather, and it's a function of getting older. Sunshine, blue skies. It's going to be low 70s today, maybe mid 70s by the time it's all said and done. Looks like finally, at least in this part of the country, baseball weather has made it to our area. I know in some places in the Northeast, in the major leagues, not the case. I don't know exactly where it was. I just saw something on a Twitter feed that quotes Reds broadcaster Marty Brennaman called Titanic Struggle, which is hilarious. But apparently somewhere in the majors last night, there was an attendance listed at 974, or that's the actual number of people who showed up. And it's largely, of course, weather related. But anyway, it is gorgeous here. It was a very nice night at the ballpark last night here at Latham Stadium. Things did not turn out the way Furman hoped they would, but it was a gorgeous night anyway. On the show today, we're going to talk about the Winthrop's win over Furman last night, 5-4, in a heck of a ball game at Latham Stadium. Look ahead to the Paladins' upcoming series with Wofford. Dave Glenn of ACCSports.com will join us, and some more off-the-court news affecting the Atlantic Coast Conference. I don't know if you've seen the story or not. We're going to get into it a little bit before we visit with Dave, but then let him do most of the commenting on it. But a superseding indictment has been filed by the FBI, and 2 more schools have been named in that superseding indictment. Kansas is one, and North Carolina State out of the ACC is the other, and apparently it revolves around former Wolfpack player Dennis Smith Jr. So we'll give you some of those details, and then we'll really let Dave get into it when he joins us. And it seems like college basketball, as great as the sport is, and coming off of just a scintillating NCAA tournament that kind of took our minds off of it for just a moment, college basketball is at a major, major crossroads right now at the upper level. And it is a sport that is, I think there are some big-time changes in the offing because of this investigation that's going on. We'll talk to Dave about it in just a little bit when he joins us right around the 10:25 mark. But anyway, last night at Latham Stadium, a good ball game. It was a game that was 1-0 until the 5th inning when Mitch Spires hit a 2-out, 3-run home run that just eluded Jared Mahalik in left field. He got back to the base of the fence, jumped as high as he could, and just came up short of robbing Spires of that 3-run home run. And Spires is a kid, by the way, and we documented this during the game yesterday. When the two teams met on March the 13th, he was hitting leadoff, had started, I think, every game or close to every game at that time, and had not driven in a run, had no home runs, obviously, and was hitting about 246. Coming into yesterday's game, less than a month later, 3 home runs and 22 RBIs, hitting about 320-something, and he hit a big 3-run home run in the game yesterday. They ultimately built a 5-1 lead, and then in the bottom of the 9th inning, the Paladins put on a big-time rally, but came up a run short, got 4 straight hits out of the gate. Tried to sacrifice with Jake Crawford to get the tying and winning runs in scoring position. That did not work out, and that's where the rally really fizzled, and the Eagles were able to hold on for the win 5-4. So the two teams split their two games this season, each winning on the other's home team, on the other's home field. I allowed myself to get suckered into a bet with Bob Woodard, their radio play-by-play guy, yesterday. So the next time Bob and I do anything on camera together, I have to wear a Winthrop hat, which I got no problem with that. Tom Reginas is a good friend of mine. I'm sure he'll supply me with a very nice hat to wear, and we'll go from there. But it was a good ball game last night. I thought the big positives for the Paladins, number one, John Michael Bertrand's bounce back from the way that things went against Georgia State last week when he gave up 6 runs, 5 earned in just an inning and 2/3. To bounce back and pitch the way he did, 6 innings, 3 runs, and really only made the one big mistake to Spires. And people are going to say, yeah, and that was a cheapie because it was hit to left field, and we know that's the shortest part of the ballpark by a long shot. And it is, but it's a park that helps Furman a lot more than it hurts Furman. So you have to take the bad with the good. That's just the ballpark that you play in here at Latham Stadium. But outside of that, Bertrand threw the ball very, very well. And for the redshirt freshman to have a nice bounce-back performance like that, it was really good to see. So he went 6 innings through 92 pitches, allowed just that 3-run home run, and coming off of the performance against Georgia State last week, it was important to see him bounce back and do that. And look, that is now, 6 really, really good appearances in his last 7 times out, the Georgia State game being the one exception to that rule. That's going to happen from time to time to young pitchers and to veteran pitchers alike. But he had a really, really nice bounce-back performance yesterday. I thought the kids that TR ran out there for his club looked good too. And he started a young man from Travelers Rest High School right here in Furman's backyard, Jason Crumley, who threw the ball really, really well for 4 innings and really appeared to be getting stronger as he went on. And then they went into their bullpen and were able to get it done from there. But it was interesting. I guess a nice little touch on top of it. Crumley, the Travelers Rest product, got to start. His battery mate, the catcher, was making his first appearance of the season. He's a freshman from J.L. Mann High School. So he had that going on kind of in their home backyard here, so to speak, at Furman. And Winthrop got out with the 5-4 victory. So the Paladins are now 16-17 on the season overall and get back into Southern Conference play this weekend, hosting Wofford at Latham Stadium, 6 o'clock on Friday. Right now, 4 o'clock Saturday and 1 o'clock on Sunday. But Sunday's weather forecast is also calling for a 90% chance of rain. And even at the moment, I think it's 50% chance on Saturday. So that schedule is going to be looked at. It will they'll make a decision before the series starts, I would imagine, as to whether they're going to try to play a doubleheader on Saturday. And that's also going to possibly affect the plans for Channel 40 to come in here and televise the Saturday game. The plan is to do that for the 4 o'clock game on Saturday. If it's a doubleheader now, are they going to do that? There's a lot of moving parts of the equation. And as soon as we have the answer to that, we'll be sure to pass it along and let you know. We need to take our first break. When we come back, we'll get into a little bit of this latest news out of the college basketball world from the FBI. It's off the court news, obviously, and do that as a way to set up Dave Glenn's appearance coming up at 10:25. As always, a show brought to you by the Atlanta Bread Company right down the road in Cherrydale Plaza here in Greenville. Jeff Massey and his folks there do such fantastic work. The food is great. The people and service are even better. And I am so thankful for the way that they have stepped forward to support this program, and hope that you are making it a point to go by there and enjoy the food, enjoy the service, and then telling them that you heard about them here and thanking them for their sponsorship. That's the Atlanta Bread Company, Cherrydale Plaza, right down the road from campus here at Furman. Please stop by and see them today. You'll hear more about them in this commercial set, and we'll come back with more on this edition of the show right after this.
Holding, number 79, defense, first down. I'm also holding a party tonight.
Great call by the official. Looks like we've got another flag on the field.
Holding a Pepsi. Necessary refreshment.
Hey, Ted, bring some of that Pepsi to my party.
Pepsi and the NFL. Welcome to the Fun Doesn't End Zone.
The Atlanta Bread Company wants to make your dining experience as convenient as possible, especially if you're ordering takeout. Go online to atlantabreadcompany.com, place your order there, and pay for it too. Then, when you get to the restaurant at Cherrydale Point, you breeze right by the cash registers and go straight to the pickup counter where your food will be waiting. And speaking of food, try the new Shrimp Po' Boy, a delicious and surprisingly healthy addition to the already great menu. That's the Atlanta Bread Company, Cherrydale Point in Greenville. When the Furman baseball team goes on the road, it travels safely, comfortably, and with the latest technology with Jeans Tours and Charters. Jeans has been a Furman favorite for decades and has serviced Furman baseball for over 20 years. Take it from head coach Brett Harker. Book your next road trip with Jeans. Jeans Tours and Charters online at jeansbussvc.com or call 864-242-1673. Jeans Tours and Charters, servicing the upstate since 1980.
If you've been sidelined by an injury, the St. Francis Sports Medicine team is here 24/7 to get you back on the field. Our highly trained network of physicians, athletic trainers, and physical therapists treat all types of sports-related injuries, even those that don't occur from playing a sport. Call the St. Francis Hurt Line at 675-HURT for priority appointments or at-home advice. Again, that's 675-HURT.
All right, welcome back to the show. We continue here on this Wednesday edition of the program. You may have seen Tracy during the last segment stick her head in the door here and hand me this note. This note says 10:25 a.m. Thursday, Clay. Furman football coach Clay Hendricks will be with us tomorrow here on the show to talk about the wrap-up of spring practice a few weeks back and the advantage he thinks he's getting by having the extra time in the weight room by doing spring practice early. It was by design to get more time in the weight room before the end of school and the players go away for a semester. So we're going to talk about all of that with him and how the plan is moving on heading into year two. He'll be with us tomorrow at 10:25. Before we go any further, a quick word about my friends at Security Complete. They are a Liberty-based company that services the entire upstate for your home and business security needs. And as we've been telling you about this offer for listeners and viewers of the show, and you can see it there on your screen, it is a basic wire-free system starting at $599. And here's the thing, before you see that price tag and say, hey, how is that saving me money? Well, I'm going to tell you. First of all, you own the equipment. Secondly, it is not proprietary. And what I mean by that is if you decide at some juncture to go with another company, the big companies, well, they're going to lock their equipment out or come back and get it where you can't use it. Not the case here. You own the equipment. It's usable and with any system, but you're going to want to stay with the folks at Security Complete, I can promise you. You see everything that you get there for that price, and then the simple low monthly rates for the monitoring service starting at just $29.99. Here's where the big-time savings comes in. After you've made the purchase and you start the monthly service, the big companies are going to lock you into a contract sometimes as long as 5 years. And you've got no way out of that without paying the balance of the contract. By going with this system and this offer and paying that price, you're going to save somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800 over the life of what would be one of those service contracts with another company. So you've got better service, top technology, people that you know and trust who are local, and you're going to save over the course of time $1,200 to $1,800. Seems like a no-brainer to me. Security Complete, 864-546-0360. Please tell them that you heard about them here on the Dan Scott Show. All right, so we mentioned that the FBI has filed a superseding indictment naming 2 more schools in its investigation of corruption into college basketball, and one of those schools is North Carolina State. Here's the crux of the update. As you know, the investigation, which already mentioned Miami and Louisville, and all this is connected to Adidas. The nature of the investigation includes alleged payments made to families of 6 student athletes in connection to players' decisions to attend those schools, which are all sponsored by Adidas. And I'm reading, by the way, from a story on CBSSports.com, so make sure that the proper credit is given. But anyway, the allegations involving North Carolina State now are believed to involve Dennis Smith Jr., who's with the Dallas Mavericks, and a $40,000 payment arranged by Adidas consultant James Gatto in 2015 to keep Smith from decommitting from the Wolfpack. And then on top of that, he's also alleged to have funneled $90,000 to the family of a player to sign with Kansas, and at least $20,000 to the player who's believed to be Silvio De Sousa, who signed with Kansas in November of last year and played 20 games as a freshman this past season. NC State and Kansas both issued statements after the latest developments came out, and part of NC State's statement reads like this, quote, "While there are no indictments against former NC State employees, the document includes allegations of a payment in 2015 from an athletics apparel company to an unidentified parent of a student athlete through a former unidentified NC State coach. As the indictment stated, the payment was designed to be concealed, including from the NCAA and officials at NC State." And that is just part of the rather lengthy statement that NC State put out. Kansas, on the other hand, put out a statement of just about 5 or 6 lines, basically saying that there was nothing that suggested any wrongdoing by the university, coaches, or staff, saying they'll cooperate, but because it's an active investigation, they do not feel it's appropriate for them to comment further at this time. So the investigation now has broadened. This is a superseding indictment brought by the FBI, which means that formal charges are being filed. And now the question is, what next, as far as how much of this information, once this investigation, once all of the proceedings are done by the FBI or even ongoing, when and if or will they turn over any of this information to the NCAA? And until that happens, the NCAA has no recourse really to do anything at all at the moment, because they don't have their hands on any of the information. There's a belief that the information will be given out perhaps in stages to the NCAA, but at the moment anyway, none of that has happened. What it does, however, regardless of when or if that happens, it just points to the fact that as great as the sport of college basketball is, there is a major, major issue that is threatening to undo the sport from the top down. And the NCAA, whether it gets its hands on the information and can go after the schools or not, Mark Emmert and company in Indianapolis have got to recognize what's happening here, and they have got to take steps to ensure this kind of thing does not happen again. How they go about that, I don't know. But they've got to do it. They've got to put their heads together and find some way to make sure that the the outside influences don't have so much influence over the sport of college basketball or any NCAA sport. But this investigation, as many people thought it would now, has widened, and the news for college basketball continues to get worse instead of better. When we come back from the break, Dave Glenn of ACCSports.com will join us. And since North Carolina State is involved, and now this is a third ACC school that has been named, along with Louisville and Miami, we'll delve into this further with the host of the David Glenn Show and the head guy at ACCSports.com when we come back. This is the Dan Scott Show, and we'll return in just a moment.
Hey, Furman fans, it's baseball season. Here at Ingles, we know that as you root for the home team, sometimes you want more than just peanuts and Cracker Jack. And while we do deliver on your favorite ballpark classics, we're proud to offer a packed lineup of everything you need to make your next meal a home run. Ingles, a proud sponsor of Furman Baseball and the official grocery store of Furman Athletics. Go Dins!
Life's healthier when you're backed by a Greenville Health System primary care doctor. Because then, the doctor that has your back is backed by the more than 1,000 physicians and specialists at the region's leading health system, all working together to bring you the right care in the right place at the right time. Great health starts with a GHS primary care doctor, and there are more than 200 of them conveniently located throughout the upstate, ready to see you. Find yours today at ghs.org/mydoctor.
Zaxby's food has always brought people together. Catering to the big moments, the little wins, the long talks, and the quick getaways. Because food this inviting is bound to add a lot of flavor to your life.
Introducing the Zax Pack. Served with chicken fingers, sides, Texas toast, and iced tea. Pick one up for dinner or your next event. Friends, family, flavor. Zaxby's. Indescribably good.
I was surprised recently when I learned that Americans spend $80 billion a year on illegal sports gambling. Sure, that's spread out over millions of gamblers, but still it makes you wonder where that money's coming from. Unfortunately, too often it's coming from money that was intended to buy groceries, pay the mortgage, or even put children through college. If gambling's had a negative impact on your life, call the SC Gambling Hotline toll-free at 877-452-5155. Help is confidential and available 24 hours a day. A message from the South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services.
10:23 as we continue here on this edition of the Dan Scott Show. It's Wednesday. It's a gorgeous day in the upstate, and are so thankful to have you with us here on the program. Quick word about Ridge Media, LLC, located here in Greenville and in Charleston. They're based in Greenville. They are the company that is putting together what will be the brand new DanScottShow.com website. They do logo, print, and website design, as well as search engine optimization and marketing, and their clients range from startups like mine to Fortune 500 companies. Locally owned marketing firm, again, based in Greenville, also with an office in Charleston. If you want to get a free consultation to find out what they can do for you, like they are for me, won't cost you a dime, make the phone call, schedule the meeting, 864-354-6175. That is Ridge Media, LLC. Well, as the familiar theme begins to build in the background, we are counting the days and appearances down before his regular summer sabbatical. I think maybe 2 more after this one. Dave Glenn, ACCSports.com, host of the David Glenn Show, syndicated throughout the state of North Carolina, is joining us as always on Wednesdays from August to April. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Dan. Good to be with you again.
Good to have you back with us, and I somewhat jokingly told you on the telephone I'd like to thank the FBI for providing us with some discussion fodder on another otherwise slow news day, but the folks up in your area right now, I would imagine not real happy with this news that the superseding indictment that was announced yesterday now includes North Carolina State.
Yeah, and when you say my neighborhood, as you know, it's always important to remember
that what makes one fan base unhappy makes other fan bases really happy. So if you're anti-Wolfpack, you're bringing up examples of scandal from the 1950s and the 1970s and the 1980s, and you're saying, here you go again. How did the Wolfpack sign one of its highest profile players ever out of the high school ranks, Dennis Smith Jr., now with the Dallas Mavericks of the NBA? Answer, well, you purchased him with the help of Adidas money, etc. So we'll see what happens when and if this evidence gets in front of the NCAA. We're still a long way from that. But even Wolfpack fans, Dan, are a little bit divided because most of them are not going to be bothered much, if at all, if the one and only season Dennis Smith Jr. played at NC State ends up being vacated somewhere down the road, because it wasn't a championship season. It was actually a losing season that got Mark Gottfried fired after he finished 13th in a 15-team ACC. Dennis Smith Jr. was an amazing player, but the Wolfpack was not good that year, and some fans of NC State are taking the pragmatic approach. You know, hey, if the NCAA down the road vacates that season, at least we're not really losing much, if anything. But what, as you know, what the new news is, and yesterday's revised indictment is what it was from the FBI. It takes the NC State case from a you used an ineligible player problem, which often does result in a vacated season, but we've seen that many, many times.
Right.
It elevates it to the possibility of, not only did you use an ineligible player, which is a problem against NCAA rules and maybe you vacate a season, but the new revised indictment says that one or more Wolfpack coaches were participants in funneling the money to Dennis Smith Jr.'s family. And anyone who knows the NCAA knows that they view it in an entirely different way. It is bad if you used an ineligible player. It is 10 times as bad if someone who collects a paycheck from your university help arrange the illicit money. So Mark Gottfried, former Wolfpack coach, is in the crosshairs. Orlando Early, his former assistant coach, is in the crosshairs. The indictment still says one or more NC State coaches, so we don't have all of those facts yet. But it's about Dennis Smith Jr., it's about his family, it's about one or more of those two former Wolfpack basketball coaches. And as I try to remind everybody, it has absolutely nothing to do with Kevin Keats or the current Wolfpack administration. The guys where the fingers are being pointed have all left NC State and are no longer there.
Yeah, and the shame of it is, and this is the way it works, because there's really no other type of repercussions that the NCAA has at its disposal if it gets the information and decides then that it can provide or lay sanctions down on the program. It's the current coach, the current staff, and the current players who are going to pay for the sins of the people who actually committed the crimes years ago.
If it comes to that, you're absolutely right. And again, we're a long way from that. These FBI cases, you know, where people are charged with felonies, not those coaches, but others are charged with felonies. You know, Adidas representatives, former assistant coaches at other universities, they are facing serious, jail time and or other sanctions. Those cases still will need a while to unfold. So those cases have to take place. We don't know if and when or how much of the information gets transferred from the FBI to the NCAA. Obviously, if you're an NC State fan, you're going to be interested in that process because the NCAA needs evidence in its hands. It can't just read media reports or watch a trial and then bring down a sledgehammer. It's not that simple. So we'll see how long that process takes. We're a long, long way from the finish line as I see it. But yesterday was a really bad day for NC State because you're right. If sanctions do come at some point down the road, you can penalize a Mark Gottfried or an Orlando Early if it comes to that. Dennis Smith Jr. is off to his mega millions of the NBA, so you can't really sanction him or his family in any way. But it's the school left holding the bag if one or more of its former employees was directly involved in funneling money to the player's family, which this revised indictment suggests was the case for NC State basketball. as, they beat out Duke and Carolina and Kentucky in some of the blue bloods for Dennis Smith Jr. coming out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I guess, tens of thousands of dollars helps explain how they did that.
Well, the other factor of this, or there are a couple of different directions I want to go. Number one, there has been for years, and this goes back to the first expansion in 2005, and you and I were doing these weekly visits then. There's a faction of the old-time, old-guard ACC that wanted nothing to do with any expansion of any kind, and when the original indictments came out that named Louisville and Miami, there were some who said, see, these are outsiders who are bringing this in to quote-unquote our conference. Well, guess what? Now this is one of the blue bloods, if you will, of the ACC who's involved in this thing, and that's got to be rocking these old-timers to the core.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Heck, I remember when Florida State joined the league in the 1990s, and then remember there was the Free Shoes University scandal and some other athletic scandals with FSU football and other athletes. So there was a little bit of that then as well. Some of the old timers forget that, UNC and NC State, if you go far back enough, were part of a point shaving scandal, that was cleaned up and probably in the long run made the league a better place. But it has never been squeaky clean. Georgia Tech has had its issues over the years. Carolina recently, of course, was not punished in the AFAM scandal, but that was certainly a stain of a different kind. We've seen a lot of examples, Clemson in your backyard over the years. It's not that the ACC was perfect. It is true that the ACC, for a period of decades, was arguably the best combination of winning on the field, winning on the court, winning in the classroom, and staying out of NCAA trouble. Now, that's overall. Again, nobody's resume was truly perfect.
Right.
But when you really crunch the numbers and the evidence, the ACC and the Big Ten were essentially the two best at combining performance on the field, performance on the classroom, and staying out of NCAA trouble. The Big Ten hasn't won as much on the field as the ACC has, but the Big Ten has stayed out of NCAA trouble more often lately than the ACC has. Again, nobody is pristine, though. It's a matter of degree everywhere. And yes, I heard some of that with Miami and Louisville. And remember, they're named in yesterday's indictment as well. There was just no new information about the Hurricanes case or the Cardinals case. The NC State case and the Kansas case had new revelations. And it struck a lot of people that the Kansas case does not include an allegation against a coach. It does involve, shoe company funneling money to family of player, and that helped the Jayhawks. And again, that puts Kansas in jeopardy of perhaps having used an ineligible player. That's a problem. However, the revised indictment against the Jayhawks does not include, Bill Self or one of his assistants doing this or that, participating in the wrongdoing. And obviously it does include those details with NC State. And that makes it a much more serious case for the Wolfpack.
Yeah, and as our buddy Scott Keeler points out, obviously we're talking all four of these schools are Adidas schools, and you mentioned the Big Ten kind of being up there with the ACC historically as being able to kind of stay at least somewhat above the fray. Well, he points out other Adidas schools that haven't been named yet, and he goes through a list here, and four of them happen to be Big Ten schools: Indiana, Michigan, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. So, I guess maybe stay tuned. Maybe they get dragged into the muck and mire as well. The other thing, Dave, that I wanted to get into, and by the way, we're visiting with Dave Glenn of ACCSports.com as we always do on Wednesdays from August to April. Whether or not the NCAA gets its hands on actual evidence anytime soon or not, that does not relieve Mark Emmert and the powers that be at Indianapolis from taking some kind of steps to clean up the sport. I mean, college basketball right now, it from the top down, it has really been rocked by this scandal, and it's obvious that there is something majorly wrong with the way things are going. They've got to do something, Dave. The question is what?
There's not an easy answer, as you know. The reality is anywhere there's a lot of money involved, there will be corruption, period. How's that for a grand statement in the history of the world? Where there is a lot of money involved, there will be corruption no matter what rules you adopt.
That's why I bring you onto the program for profound statements like that.
Sadly, that is the case.
Yeah.
I mean, at the center of this FBI investigation, you have a former NBA agent whose office the FBI raided, and they collected his computers and his documents and other important information through the power of a subpoena and the power of the federal government. And this is how we had come to light things that have happened. We all know other agents are guilty of funneling money to families on the hope that these future NBA players will sign with their agency or their shoe company, right? We all know that happens. And what's scary is this former NBA agent, Andy Miller, who's at the center of it all, we know that he's only one of many. And I'm not saying there aren't clean ones, just like there are clean coaches and there are clean schools. Nobody follows all the rules perfectly, but there is a line between those willing to funnel tens of thousands of dollars to recruits' families and those who might forget, what day I'm allowed to call a recruit and break those smaller rules, if you will. There is nothing the NCAA can adopt that would do away with all of this corruption. People have to remember that, and it's often left out of the equation. Now, what the NCAA is trying to do is say, hey, we're going to continue to tweak our model. We've already tweaked it in a half a dozen ways that are more pro-student athlete, and I believe that is true in small increments. They're not ready to abandon amateurism, which is really the only way that the most valuable athletes in the most valuable sports, football and men's basketball, are going to get a fair trade. If the NCAA clings to amateurism, those players will never get a fair trade. Now, I'm a believer that most college athletes do get a fair trade, right? 28 out of 30 sports lose money or break even. So you can't complain about not getting more when you're part of an enterprise where they're not making any money in 28 out of 30 sports. Even in the two revenue sports, there are a lot of guys that can't really claim I'm central to the financial success. If you're the 11th, 12th, or 13th guy on the basketball bench, you're not really central to the financial success of that basketball program. But the star athletes, the future NFL and NBA players clearly are. There is no tweaking of the amateurism model that is going to end up with a fair trade for those particular players who are typically African American, which adds another racially charged element to this debate. The NCAA is trying to say, hey, NBA, will you change your draft rules so that some of these guys will go straight from high school to the NBA and they can just have their money when they want their money? Hey, G League, the NBA's minor league, essentially, will you guys improve your current $25,000 a year salary? So these high school seniors who really want their hands out, under the current rules, Dan, people forget this. If you're the 18-year-old high school senior superstar, you do not have to go to college, a phrase thrown around all the time. Now, you might not like the idea of going to China or elsewhere overseas for a six-figure salary because of the cultural barriers or whatever. You might not like the G League because it's only offering you a $25,000 salary. Although if you're with the G League, remember, if you're high profile enough, if you're such a future certain star, you can negotiate as a G League player with Under Armour or Adidas or Nike for supplemental income as you're waiting your 1 year under the current rules before you're eligible for the NBA draft. It is not pure free market. But I think lost in the debate is often those high school superstars have, under the current structure, the international option for a year if they want it, and then jump to the NBA if you're good enough. The G League option for a year if you want it, and then jump to the NBA if you're good enough. And then if you want to take advantage of what is clearly an infinitely higher profile platform, March Madness, ACC basketball, Kentucky basketball, etc., you're going to build your brand in front of mega millions of eyeballs with that 1 year in college, if you take it. But you will have to go to class to stay eligible. And if you really don't want that part of the equation, maybe you should just go to the G League or overseas. It's not a perfect structure as it is, but there is not a single tweak that'll make all of these problems go away.
Dave Glenn, ACCSports.com. Bottom line, knowing how the justice system works and getting the federal government involved in it obviously adds a whole different layer to it. Do you have any idea what kind of timeline we might be looking at to get the legal aspect of this stuff done to then start getting some answers from an NCAA standpoint?
I'd have to double check some of those details, Dan, but I would not be surprised if the legal process took us into 2019. You know, those trials have to either take place or be settled, or who knows, this whole thing might grow new branches with, more people charged.
Yeah.
So that could take even longer. The NCAA does not have a good track record of getting its hands on information in the interim. And of course, the federal government has no interest in taking especially, otherwise confidential information and sharing it with anybody. In many cases, that's actually against the law. So this is going to be, I believe, a long process. Now, if somehow people start talking and people start settling and they tie a bow on this in this calendar year, well, then the NCAA part of it could happen in 2019. Mm-hmm. But we are not near the finish line, and that's especially the case for anyone wondering about NCAA sanctions down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's the big X factor in this thing, especially considering the fact that you're talking about the Federal Bureau of Investigation being involved here. And normally, as we know, if the feds go after somebody, 95% of the time, they're going to get them if they really want them. It'll be interesting to see how many guys roll over, to use a street term, and if that speeds the process up at all, or take a plea deal, or whatever the case may be. This whole thing, it's the proverbial train wreck, Dave. You don't want to watch it, but you kind of have to.
It is. It's a mess. And a guy from your backyard, Merrill Code, the former Clemson player, is right in the middle of all this.
Yeah.
This is a guy dealing with serious criminal charges and possible jail time. Now, remember, people forget this. Rick Pitino lost his job at Louisville because of at least in part because of the FBI investigation. Mm-hmm. But Rick Pitino is not accused of or charged with a crime. Mark Gottfried and Orlando Early at NC State. These guys are not the targets of the FBI investigation. Now, their names come up, and depending on where the evidence goes, they could be in trouble with the NCAA. Mark Gottfried right now is the new head coach at Cal Northridge. Cal Northridge actually put out a statement saying, we did our due diligence, we vetted this candidate, we were told there are no red flags. And others were saying, are you serious? There are more red flags surrounding Mark Gottfried and his NC State tenure than there are at an old Soviet Union party, right? I mean, how many more red flags can you possibly want to see? So the individuals can face NCAA issues, but it's only a small handful, relatively speaking, including Merrill Code, who are in the crosshairs of the FBI and the federal government. And that's the scariest place to be because, Orlando Early's not even a coach right now. He might be in the process of turning the page and moving on to other things, in which case it doesn't matter if the NCAA would slap you with a 10-year show cause penalty or something like that because you were involved, allegedly, with, funneling money to Dennis Smith Jr.'s family. If you've already turned the page, any NCAA sanctions are essentially meaningless to you, while they're meaningful to the university that you left behind. And in the case of a Mark Gottfried, obviously, if it came to that, his current job is done, and his future in college basketball would be in jeopardy as well.
Yeah, it's the tentacles that are reaching from this thing are many and far-reaching, and we'll just continue to watch it. And anything on the field, anything going on draft-wise that we need to maybe talk about before we wrap this thing up? And any good news out of the ACC, David?
I think it's going to be fun to see where the ACC settles in terms of its dominance or at least presence in the upper rounds of the NFL draft, because Bradley Chubb of NC State, the defensive end, is going to be a first rounder. It's only a matter of where. Derwin James, the Florida State safety. Jair Alexander, the Louisville cornerback. Lamar Jackson, of course, of Louisville, the quarterback, we'll see where he goes. But Tremaine Edmonds of Virginia Tech, a linebacker. Harold Landry of Boston College, the guy who surprised a lot of people by coming back for his senior year and then did not have as good a senior year as his junior year was. Will he end up in the first round, or will he have actually, in retrospect, have hurt himself by staying for his senior year with the Eagles? Mm-hmm. There are names beyond those guys, but, there's 6 potential first-round picks from the Atlantic Coast Conference. And there's another dozen guys that I could mention in terms of rounds 2 and 3 where, the money is bigger and the chance of making the team is better. And it's just a better first step for that step into professional football.
Yeah, and it's going to be an intriguing year from a standpoint, say, just, again, in our backyard here where Clemson is concerned, because this will be the first year in a handful that maybe they don't have a first-round draft choice, but that's because everybody came back. All those defensive guys decided to come back for their senior year, and of course that's got folks in Tiger Town really excited. But the draft will be a little different this year from a Clemson perspective.
Yeah, it's amazing. Florida State will have a bigger presence in the NFL draft after a bad year by the Seminoles standards. NC State, Virginia Tech, they'll have big presences in this year's NFL draft. I think with Clemson, we're looking at Dorian O'Daniel, who, of course, was a senior, right? So, he might be late first round. He could be second or third round. I don't know. But beyond that, you're talking about a Deion Kane, a little further down the ladder, right? You're talking about a Taylor Hearn a little further down the ladder, Van Smith further down the ladder. The Tigers will have their presence, but it's just not going to be nearly the top-heavy presence that it usually is in the NFL draft.
No, until the 2019 draft comes around,
right.
and then it all happens again. Dave, tell everybody how they can keep up with everything that you're doing there.
ACCsports.com continues to be the online Grand Central station, and we always encourage folks to follow us on Twitter. @ACC Sports is one of our handles, also @David Glenn Show, and anyone who ever wants to check out our noon to 3 daily show, which is heard all around North Carolina and even pockets of Virginia and South Carolina, you can always go to davidglennshow.com. Find one of our affiliates or find one of the streams that carry our 3-hour show every weekday.
Hey, Dave, I got to tell you this before I let you go. Scott dropped another note on us in the Facebook Live comments section. You're talking about Mark Gottfried and all the red flags surrounding him. Did you know that he brought in Jim Herrick as a special advisor?
Yeah.
How about that?
I had seen that was scheduled, and I was thinking to myself, is Cal Northridge serious? Have they approved that yet? I saw the word that he was trying to add him to the staff. I had not seen the final word that he got that job approved, because there's a guy with an interesting NCAA compliance track record, to say the least.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, man, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, see you, Dave.
Thanks.
Take care, buddy.
That is Dave Glenn of ACCsports.com. We'll take a quick break, come back, and put a wrap on things for this Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday edition of the show right after this. Stay with us.
Holding, number 79, defense, first down. I'm also holding a party tonight.
Great call by the official. Looks like we've got another flag on the field.
Holding, a Pepsi. Necessary refreshment.
Hey, Ted, bring some of that Pepsi to my party.
Pepsi and the NFL. Welcome to the Fun Doesn't End Zone.
The Atlanta Bread Company wants to make your dining experience as convenient as possible, especially if you're ordering takeout. Go online to atlantabreadcompany.com, place your order there, and pay for it too. Then, when you get to the restaurant at Cherrydale Point, you breeze right by the cash registers and go straight to the pickup counter where your food will be waiting. And speaking of food, try the new Shrimp Po' Boy, a delicious and surprisingly healthy addition to the already great menu. That's the Atlanta Bread Company, Cherrydale Point in Greenville.
Let me tell you something, Cowboy. This rookie can really bring the heat.
He's smoky and spicy with a Chipotle style all his own.
It's a new Montgomery Inn Chipotle barbecue sauce. Make it a part of your home team.
Available now at your neighborhood grocer or online at CincyFavorites.com.
All right, welcome back. Our thanks to Dave Glenn, as always, for spending time with us and doing what he does in only the way that he can. So it's always a very difficult time for me when the end of April rolls around, because I have to work an extra segment on the show for May, June, and July, and part of August. But we understand, and we get such great info out of him, and have for years and years now, and really appreciate the continued effort. Just a reminder about Hall's Chop House, located downtown, the Greenville Steakhouse, right there on Main Street beside the 7 on Main studio. You need to check them out. They're open 7 nights a week for dinner, brunch on Sundays, and now open Friday and Saturday for lunch as well. So 2 more opportunities to enjoy the great food and fantastic service you get. And I can't emphasize this enough. You know, we talk about the Allen Brothers Prime Steak and the how that leads the menu, and everything falls into place there. But the most amazing thing to me is the number of people that they run through there a night, 350, 450 people every night. They have a way of making you feel like your table is the most important one when you're there. And they do that for everybody in the place. It's an incredible level of customer service, and that's one of the reasons that Hall's has been so successful down in Charleston with all of their operations there, and now for 2 years here in Greenville. Hall's Chop House, the Greenville Steakhouse. Please tell them that you heard about them here on the show. And with that, kind of again today, we're going to wrap it up a little early, as you can still hear the voice. Good news is heading to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and we're going to get some answers on this thing and try to get it all cleared up here in the not-too-distant future. We'll be back with you tomorrow, and Clay Hendricks, the Furman football coach, will be with us at 10:25 to just kind of update us on how things are going since the end of spring practice, talk about spring practice, the weight room, how Coach Bernardi has changed the culture with his program down there since coming on, and everything that goes along with it. He'll be with us for a good long visit here tomorrow. Until then, you folks have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I'm Dan Scott. God bless you, and so long, everybody.